contents of these books are regarded by many people as legends. So can we believe the Gospel of Philip? Was Mary really Jesus' closest companion? Well, there is other evidence for this, and some of it is even in the Bible itself. The Bible says that Mary Magdalene was present at the two most important moments in the life of Jesus.
The New Testament Gospels give a lot of space to the story about Jesus' arrest, his trial, the crucifixion, and the resurrection.
A group of women, including Mary, were present at the crucifixion.
Here are Mary Magdalene and the other women. The disciples have long since fled in their fear. The women have hung by Jesus. They're there to witness the crucifixion.
In some Gospels, they observe in horror from a distance. In others, they are weeping at the foot of the cross. The Gospel of John says that Jesus is given something to drink. We imagine by one of the women, perhaps Mary. We don't know historically whether the Romans would actually have allowed followers to attend executions, but if the women were there, it must have been agony for them to endure this scene. Jesus' suffering was prolonged, and finally, the man whose teachings had transformed Mary's life was dead. And the movement might have died with him. Without its leader, his following might easily have fallen into disarray, then collapsed altogether. But we all know this wasn't the case, because of what happened next. And this, according to the Bible, is when Mary Magdalene takes center stage. After his death, Jesus' body was placed in a rock tomb. We're told that Mary Magdalene was one of the women who kept vigil. It's not hard to imagine how she must have felt when she went to anoint the body of her Messiah. It was customary at this time for Jewish women to prepare bodies for burial. Corpses were considered unclean, and so it was always a woman's task to handle them. Mary is already in deep mourning. She has witnessed Jesus' horrific execution, perhaps at some risk to herself. But according to the Bible, when she goes to the tomb, Jesus' body is no longer there. The fullest account of Mary's role after discovering the empty tomb is in the Gospel of John. She's in a state of shock and runs to where the disciples are gathered to tell them the news.
When she reports to the disciples, she is not believed. And I think that just reflects perfectly their attitude about a woman witness. They're just thinking, well, she's hysterical or something, and so we needn't believe this.
It is quite understandable why the disciples refused to believe Mary. She was a woman, and I'd go on to say a woman who had until recently been considered stark raving mad.
Because they don't believe her, Peter and another unnamed disciple return with her to the tomb to see for themselves. Peter reacts to the sight of the discarded burial cloth with anger and dismay. But the other disciple understands what has happened and concludes that Jesus must have risen from the dead. The two of them leave without a backward glance at Mary. Then something even more extraordinary happens. It is Mary Magdalene's biggest moment. Mary is alone when someone asks her why she's crying. She believes it's the gardener and says, "They have taken my Lord's body, and I do not know where he is." The figure says her name, and then she sees Jesus. She is overwhelmed and says, "Master?" and goes forward to reach out to him. But he stops her. He says, "Don't touch me." Instead, she must go to the others and tell them that he has risen from the dead. It's an awesome moment. Jesus stands before her, yet he's beyond her reach. It cannot be said if Jesus really stood before her, resurrected, or if Mary simply believed she had seen him. But either way, in this one moment, Mary's experience took the Christian movement in an important new direction.
A new concept developed which had nothing to do with what Jesus himself was preaching, and this is the concept that Jesus didn't die. Or, in other words, he did die, but he was raised from the dead because he was God's Son, which suggests, of course, that there's no reason for the movement to disintegrate. It is not a failure, it is, in fact, a great success. This idea is the idea of Mary Magdalene.
Jesus' resurrection was the turning point for Christianity. This was when it changed from a small movement to a whole new religion, and Mary Magdalene was a key figure in this event. You might think then that at the very least Mary would be recognised as an apostle, one of the early missionaries who founded the religion, as she seems to meet all the criteria set out in the Bible.
And if we look at the Gospel of Luke, it states very clearly that the qualification for becoming an apostle was to have been with Jesus during his ministry, to have been a witness to the death and resurrection, and to be able to then go out and teach the true gospel which he gave. Mary Magdalene fills that role perfectly.
Yet that's a role the Bible never gives to her. Nowhere in the New Testament is Mary Magdalene named as an apostle. To find out why, we have to return to another long-lost apocryphal text. In a Cairo bazaar in 1896, a German scholar happened to come across a curious papyrus book. It was bound in leather and written in Coptic, the ancient language of early Christian Egypt. But the origin of this document was very mysterious.
Unfortunately, we know almost nothing about the discovery of the manuscript. The story that was told at the time is that it came from Akhmim in Upper Egypt, and something was said about its having been found in a niche in a wall.
The town of Akhmim was home to a persecuted Christian community in the early centuries, so the document might have been carefully hidden by a martyr, heretic or monk. On closer examination, the text revealed itself as something truly remarkable. It was the gospel